Hello and welcome to another edition of the Photographica Podcast, brought to you in association with photographic.com, where a print isn't a print unless it's perfect. Flow Photographic is run by me, Alex Schneiderman, and we print for clients who include photographers, galleries, museums all over the world. We have our own methods of printing and we are inkjet print specialists. So please get in touch through the podcast, through our website at flowphotographic.com, or through any of the myriad ways you can of reaching me through my website, alexschneiderman.net, through Twitter at Schneiderman331, that's no R and one N, at Schneiderman331. There are so many ways you can get in touch with me. So please, I look forward to hearing from you, and in particular, if you want to pull me up about something in this essay or any previous ones, or any of my pieces that I write in Black+White Photography Magazine every month on the philosophy of photography, please get in touch. I like to argue, I like to learn. This edition of the Photographica Podcast, which is a recording of an essay I wrote for Black+White Photography Magazine in issue 193 on the subject of purpose in photography, was originally, I had hoped, going to be topped with a poem by Emily Dickinson, which I'm going to read here because I believe that purpose is very much evident in poetry and quite often not so evident in photography. But I'm just going to read this beautiful poem right for you right now. For each ecstatic instant we must an anguish pay, in keen and quivering ratio to the ecstasy. For each beloved hour, sharp pittances of years, bitter contested farthings, and coffers heaped with tears. Now, that just seems to me to be a perfect encapsulation of the purpose and the which is inherent in great poetry, and it speaks to a discipline and a clearness of thought at the outset, or at least once a poem has been edited and written and rewritten and rewritten and rewritten, that purpose will be honed and honed and honed until it comes shining through. So let me read that to you again. For each ecstatic instant we must an anguish pay, in keen and quivering ratio to the ecstasy. For each beloved hour, sharp pittances of years, bitter contested farthings, and coffers heaped with tears. I think it's one of the processes of poetry whereby and much like sculpture, if you like, where the original source material is worked at and worked at and worked at and reduced and reduced and reduced to its most fundamental parts, which makes poetry so satisfying. And it's about this aspect of this art form, which in many ways is not contradictory to photography, but it deals in words and not images, and so is the inverse, which I believe photography has much to learn from. Don't hesitate to get in touch with me if you disagree or you want to add to anything or you think I've missed anything out. As ever, I like to argue and I like to learn. So I give you my essay on purpose. Poetry, it could be said, is the highest form of art, one to which all other forms aspire. Perhaps this is because of the way our human minds have developed in the shade of language, and how words and their sounds, their ebb and flow, can cut to the centre of the human condition. Whilst often hard to glean and difficult to read, poems are written with great care, with each syllable and word balanced so the whole makes a new kind of sense. Purpose is not always evident, but it is always present in poetry. It could be argued that this purpose, this commitment to a particular direction, is not present in much of the photography we can readily access today. The best photography can occasionally achieve the elusive and untouchable quality of great poetry, But what quality do we ascribe to the work which is exhibited and shared, which never achieves that status? Dross, pap, experiment? There is an unaccounted cost to observers of these images without purpose. Vital energy and spirit are expended in the engagement and then realization that much of this work, while superficially interesting, leads us only into cul-de-sacs of estrangement and tedium. For the purposes of this essay, photography and other prosaic forms of photography have to be put to one side. Photographers like Rinko Kawachi, Josef Sudek, Man Ray, Paul Kuika, Matthew Pillsbury and Saul Leiter, to name a few photo poets, have made their names by showing us not what matters in the external world, but rather by manifesting the internal discourse of the human spirit. These photographers are poetic artists who use photography as their medium. Arguably, the work of these photographers is often marked by its seeming lack of purpose. Their pictures just are. And when we see them in a book, online, or in a gallery, we are invited to take them for what they are, just because they are there for us to see. The power of these works comes, in part, from their uselessness, as much as it does from their aesthetic form. But in the background there is always a purpose to their work, not perhaps the kind that builds skyscrapers or empires, but a deep, quiet, and subconscious sense of purpose. Purpose has no relationship with usefulness, and uselessness is not at all the same as pointlessness. Purpose is often lost in the mistaken belief that a veneer of something otherworldly or indecipherable is all that is required to give validity to an image. How many times do you inwardly sigh as you scan the images posted online or in some magazines, books or exhibitions and realize that the only quality you can detect in these photographs is the pointlessness they appear to revel in? The amount of work shown that can only have relevance to the progenitor is staggering. We read blurbs that firmly place the work in a historical context, that make an observer feel dumb for not feeling anything. Pointlessness is endemic in a medium made easy to create and disseminate by technology. But is it possible that in many cases even those same creators of this work are themselves baffled and unconvinced by it too? There is, however, a cure for the ennui here described. If a point is missing, it must be found. The jumping off point for a series or a single image should be a considered point, nailed down, staked out and pinned up, considered again from the point of view of experience, and then kicked around to the point of destruction. Placing intellect, experience and instinct at the center of the creative drive pulls the creative dynamic into shape, leading to better, clearer thinking and imagery with greater complexity, intelligence and deeper intellectual values. There is a corollary to this encomium. Purposeful work requires bravery on the part of the photographer. If work has a purpose, then it risks failing to address or even establish the point it is trying to make. In other words, by aiming to achieve something, work may fail simply because it aims to have a purpose. But what is the alternative? So much work is allowed into the public domain which has no point that even the artist that created it can determine. This speaks to a postmodern deconstructed view of the art world according to the mantra that the experience of art and any meaning derived from it is firmly in the domain of the beholder. This requires nothing of the artist and places all the responsibility for deriving value or meaning on the part of the observer. Artworks which seek only to preach or are dogmatic or didactic are often boring and grandiose, but the alternative, work which has no meaning to which an artist will pin his or her intellect and reputation, is a waste of time because it can never teach us anything. A return to intellect and bravery, a sense of purpose, a chance of failure are what makes art exciting. Where these qualities are absent, so is art, and so is the poetic dance of light which, when shone in the right direction, can illuminate all our lives.